Welcome to our video on the road to September the 11th. So the end of the Cold War brought with it the potential for peace and prosperity across the world. One historian even called it the end of history. However, the end of the Cold War unleashed a new form of ideology such as nationalism and fundamentalism, which crept up in conflict across the world. Places like Yugoslavia or the Middle East started to explode in violence. One such area of turmoil was in Afghanistan. There were still a huge amount of consequences from the terrible war that had waged there from 1979. 15,000 Soviets lay dead, and the United States had helped to achieve this with the help of the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen were Islamic warriors drawn from across the Muslim world and devoted to waging a jihad, a holy war. The United States had supplied the Mujahideen with money and weapons which had used to very effective use. However, what happened in Afghanistan afterwards was a bloody civil war where lots of rival groups of people tried to take over the country. And in 1994, it was the Taliban who took over Afghanistan. These were fundamentalist Islamic fighters who wanted Afghanistan to form a strict Islamic state. They were to follow Sharia law, and this was to be enforced. And this included quite controversial things in the West, such as ensuring that women had their head covered at all times, and education for women was stopped after a certain age. Into this mix, you have Osama bin Laden. So Osama bin Laden, highly famous, a Saudi, son of a multi-billionaire from Saudi Arabia. He was a Mujahideen fighter, very famous. He fought in Afghanistan, fighting against the Soviets, and he was fundamentalist. He followed a very strict set of Muslim beliefs. He was very angry that Muslim nations relied on American money and resources. He's particularly angry about the United States forces being in Saudi Arabia, and close to the holy city of Mecca in the Gulf War and following the Gulf War as well too. In 1988, he founded a terrorist organization called Al-Qaeda. Now, what does Al-Qaeda believe? Well, Al-Qaeda, it means the base, and they're a militant Islamist extremist organization. They're devoted to a fundamentalist version of Sunni Islam. And they want a couple of things. They wanted to establish a global Islamic caliphate, uniting Muslims and governed by strict Sharia Muslim law or Islamic law. They believed in a jihad, a holy war against the West, especially the United States, which it believes are controlled by Christians and Jews, and it believes that they are absolutely hostile to Islam. They also oppose secular Muslim countries and justify attacks on Muslims that don't believe in their views. And they promote terrorist attacks, including suicide attacks, bombings, and shootings across the world. So there is a road to 9/11. There are a number of attacks that act as footprints all the way to what happens on September 11th, 2001. First of all, there's a number of attacks, but one of the first big ones was the World Trade Center attack in New York. So it was actually attacked in 1993. 6 people were killed, 1,000 were injured after car bombs blew up underneath the World Trade Center. In 1998, there was devastating embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania targeting the United States embassies there. Horrific bombings, 224 killed, over 5,000 people injured as well too. And then in 2000, the American warship USS Cole was attacked off the coast of Yemen. 17 sailors were killed. So what about the September 11th attacks? Well, on September 11th, 2001, Al-Qaeda launched its most deadly set of attacks yet. In a series of plane hijackings, it attacked or attempted to attack key economic, political, and military targets in the United States. New York was first, with the attacks on the Twin Towers, highly recognizable buildings in the center of New York. 2 hijacked planes were flown into the towers, causing them to collapse, killing nearly 3,000 people and causing billions of pounds of damage. Another attack targeted the Pentagon, America's military heart, in Washington, D.C. 125 people were killed in that attack, and then a 4th plane was actually stopped from reaching its intended target by passengers, but unfortunately it crashed in Pennsylvania, killing everyone on board. What are the reasons for these attacks then? Well, First of all, they're symbolic. The targets represented the United States' economic and military might and were targeted specifically for that. There's also jihad. So Al Qaeda wanted to provoke the United States into a war in the Middle East, therefore creating a potential holy war. There's Israel. So Al Qaeda hated United States support for Israel, a proven, dedicated enemy of many Islamic countries across the Middle East. And then there's beliefs. Al Qaeda just hated the United States culture and wanted to challenge this and promote Islamic beliefs. So, what are the responses to the September 11th? Well, George W. Bush, the American president, announces a war on terror dedicated on hunting those who had carried out this attack down, as well as their supporters. And this war begins to include lots of allies across the world, including the United Kingdom. One of the key targets for this war on terror is Afghanistan itself. President George W. Bush launches that war in 2001, specifically to hunt down bin Laden and destroy Al Qaeda. This is followed in 2003 by a much more controversial war in Iraq. And this was linked to the war on terror, but there was no links found between 9/11 and Iraq before, during, or after this horrific war. Many thanks for watching. I appreciate it.